The back doors were propped open, not ajar, not unlocked, propped deliberately, with purpose, as if someone needed both hands free and could not afford the door closing behind them. 59 days since Nancy Guthrie was taken from her Tucson home. And this week, for the first time, investigators and reporters went to the back of that house, around the cactus, through the brush, past the rattlesnakes already waking from their winter, and asked the question nobody had asked loudly enough before. What actually happened back there? The answers are not comforting. And a new development this morning in the Ransom note story has raised the darkest question this case has yet produced. I am Sandra, and this is the True Crime Report. If you are new here, subscribe right now. This case is not slowing down. It is fracturing in new directions every single day. Brian Entin, the News Nation correspondent who has been on the ground in Tucson longer and more consistently than any other national journalist, flew back to Arizona this week specifically to examine the back of Nancy Guthrie's home in person. What he found, accompanied by former Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Krieger, changes how most people have been visualizing this crime. The terrain behind the Catalina Foothills neighborhood is not a gentle desert landscape. It is dense with cactus, thorns, rocks, and brush that has grown undisturbed for decades in a neighborhood that dates to the 1960s and 1970s. The vegetation is thick enough that Entin and Krieger, two able-bodied adults in daylight, lost their sense of direction within seconds of entering the common easement area behind the homes. Krieger, a man who spent nearly 3 decades working this terrain, had to pull up a map on his phone to orient himself. Rattlesnakes are already active. The region hit triple digits early this year, and the snakes have been waking ahead of schedule. Neighbors in the area have been warned. Now consider doing all of that at 2 a.m. in the dark, potentially carrying or restraining an 84-year-old woman who cannot walk to her own mailbox on most days. Krieger's assessment was direct. When Entin asked whether he thought a suspect or suspects could have brought Nancy out through the back terrain, Krieger said it was possible, but highly improbable. There's no way they're bringing her back this way, he said. The terrain alone rules it out as an exit route. Too loud, too slow, too disorienting at night, too many dogs that would have alerted. But here is the detail that shifts everything. Krieger believes the back doors were used as the entry point, not the exit. His theory, based on the physical evidence available, the suspect or suspects came in through the back, where Nancy rarely locked her doors. The back doors were propped open on the way in, either as a planned exit strategy that was abandoned or as a way to ensure a clear, obstacle-free path deeper into the house. Then they brought Nancy out through the front door where the blood trail runs, over the threshold, down the gravel path, all the way to the driveway. The back door is probably how they got in, Krieger told Entin. My hunch is they went out the front door because of the blood that was found out there. Sheriff Nanos had already warned publicly that don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe, and that the suspect could absolutely strike again. That warning now carries a different weight when you stand behind that house and understand the terrain. Savannah Guthrie's account of how the family found out their mother was gone has now been heard by millions of Americans. But in that interview with Hoda Kotb, one specific moment has not received the attention it deserves, because it tells us something important about the earliest hours of this investigation and the tension that was already building between the family and law enforcement. Savannah described being on the phone with Sheriff Nanos almost immediately after arriving in Arizona. And what she and her siblings were doing in that first conversation was not asking for updates. They were having to argue. They were explaining to the sheriff of the county where their mother disappeared that this was not a wandering case, that Nancy was not someone who could have simply walked away, that her back was so bad she could barely make it to the mailbox on her best days, that the back doors were propped open, that the Ring camera had been yanked off the wall, that there was blood on the front step, that her phone, her purse, her watch, her medication, all of it was still inside. And the sheriff's department, according to what Savannah described, was not yet treating this as a kidnapping. They were treating it as a missing person. That gap between what the family knew in the first hour and what the department was willing to classify it as is the gap that allowed the crime scene to begin deteriorating before it was fully secured. It is the gap that allowed reporters to walk up to the front door, that allowed the camera mount bracket to stay on the wall for weeks. That, in the assessment of former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Richard Carmona, may have permanently compromised any prosecution. Carmona's public accusation that the Pima County crime scene was corrupted and that a pizza delivery driver walking across an active crime scene was emblematic of systemic failure has since been echoed by multiple former law enforcement professionals who reviewed the case publicly. Legal analyst Emily Baker, reviewing the same facts this week, made a pointed observation about Sheriff Nanos's deposition. Sworn testimony in which he was asked directly whether he had ever been suspended as a law enforcement officer. He said no. Public records from the El Paso Police Department tell a different story entirely. The institutional collapse around this investigation has now entered a new and more serious phase, and it has produced a word that carries specific legal weight: perjury. The Arizona Republic, reviewing a deposition transcript from December 11, 2025, found that Sheriff Nanos was asked under oath, "Did you ever receive a discipline that rose to the level of suspension?" Nanos answered, "No." El Paso Police Department employment records, reviewed by the same outlet, show that Chris Nanos was suspended 8 separate times between 1977 and 1982, accumulating a total of 37 days of suspension or unpaid leave. The violations included excessive force, including a 15-day suspension for allegedly striking a suspect in the head during an arrest that resulted in hospitalization, discharge of his firearm, illegal gambling, habitual tardiness, failure to report for duty, insubordination, making threats, and dereliction of duty. In 1982, he resigned in lieu of termination. The department listed insubordination and consistent inefficiency as the reasons. He then applied for a position in Pima County without disclosing any of this. When the Arizona Republic asked Nanos about his prior employment history, his first response in an email to the reporter read, "Ignore her." 2 minutes later, a follow-up email arrived. Apparently, the first message had been sent to the wrong recipient. The second message stated, "We never speak to cases under litigation." The Pima County Deputies Union, representing more than 300 officers, voted unanimously to call for his resignation. Their statement described the disciplinary history as raising serious concerns about leadership fitness and noted that Nanos would likely never have been certified as a peace officer in Arizona had the history been properly disclosed at the time of hiring. The Board of Supervisors invoked a rarely used 19th century territorial law requiring Nanos to submit sworn reports. Perjury is being examined as a formal legal possibility, and Nanos told the local press he was proud of his colorful past, including wrecking 5 patrol cars. He said, "It's what shaped me throughout my career." This is the man who ran the first press conference about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, who declared the crime scene processed and opened it back up, who chose a private Florida lab over the FBI's Quantico facility, who changed his timeline 3 times, who sent all the search and rescue teams home the day after Nancy disappeared. Now we know he should never have been in that position in the first place. While the sheriff's institutional collapse was dominating headlines, investigators and journalists were simultaneously re-examining a question that should have been asked more carefully months ago. What was the true complexity of the ransom note situation? And what do the notes actually tell us about who did this? The first confirmed ransom note arrived Tuesday, February 3rd, sent to TMZ and two local Tucson television stations. It demanded $4 million in Bitcoin by February 5th, escalating to $6 million if unpaid by February 9th. The note included specific details about the interior of Nancy's home that the FBI found credible enough to treat seriously. Then, on February 5th, a second note arrived at KOLD-TV in Tucson. No new deadline, something the sender claimed would prove they were the same people who sent the first note. And then there is the third note, sent to TMZ in mid-February, weeks after the original deadlines had passed, that Harvey Levin of TMZ described on CNN as more graphic and chilling than the first. That note demanded a large sum of money in a different cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin, roughly equivalent to the original $6 million demand. It also, according to Levin, graphically described the consequences of non-payment. It included directives involving the media, specific conditions tied to what media outlets reported and published that triggered payment mechanics. The money will automatically go into this account if certain things happen, Levin said. It actually involves the media, too, in terms of what the media puts out. It is a very sophisticated way of doing it, where one thing triggers another, which triggers another. That level of technical sophistication, a cryptocurrency payment system with media-triggered conditions, is not the work of a panicking opportunist who grabbed an elderly woman on impulse. It is the work of someone who understands both blockchain architecture and media dynamics, someone who had thought through how to receive payment without leaving a conventional financial trail, and who had built redundancy into the system. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Hamilton and veteran agent Maureen O'Connell, speaking on the Megyn Kelly Show, raised the question that cuts to the heart of the ransom note situation. If Savannah believed two of the notes were real, why did the family never pay? O'Connell's answer was pointed. I think the FBI was probably telling her, without proof of life, do not pay these people. It will never end. And if they can't provide proof of life, then we could very well be dealing with the wrong people. Hamilton pushed further, noting that the notes lacked the kind of hyper-specific personalization that would make them genuinely credible from an investigative standpoint. So if you're going to apologize, and I'm going to take it seriously, he said, I would have liked to have seen something like, I apologize for knocking over the picture in the room, something not released to the public. That tension between Savannah's belief that two notes were real and Hamilton's skepticism is the fault line this entire case sits on. And now there is a new, unverified claim that makes that fault line more uncomfortable than ever. There is a claim circulating as of this morning that, if true, would answer the hardest question in this entire investigation. An X account known as Nerdy Addict, which has reportedly been accurate in prior reporting on this case, claims to have two independent sources confirming that the second ransom note received in this case was not a demand at all. It was an apology. The note allegedly states that the sender did not realize how serious Nancy's heart condition was, and that she has, in the sender's words, gone to be with God. According to available reporting on this claim, investigators believe the message came from the same individuals who previously demanded Bitcoin, though the latest letter reportedly made no demands and was framed solely as an apology. This has not been confirmed by law enforcement. It has not been confirmed by the Guthrie family. It has not been verified by any established media organization. Present it as what it is, an unverified claim from an anonymous account carrying the specific weight of two sources saying the same thing. But here is why it cannot be dismissed. Go back to the family's response to the second note. Savannah and her siblings released a statement that read, "We received your message. We understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay. Return our mother. Celebrate with her. Peace. Very valuable to us." Those are not the words of a family negotiating for a live hostage's release. Those are the words of a family asking for a body. Megyn Kelly, reviewing the family's public statements on air, noted, "Many of us sat and said, that sounds like they believe Nancy is no longer alive." She added, "Return our mother to us so we can celebrate with her, a celebration of life." That would dovetail with Nerdy's reporting that the second ransom note was more of an apology, and then the family never paid. TMZ confirmed through ongoing monitoring that the Bitcoin cryptocurrency wallet listed in the original ransom demand has remained empty. It stayed empty past the first deadline, past the second deadline, into the 8th week of the investigation. If the second note told the family that Nancy was already gone, that the heart condition had taken her before any ransom could be delivered, the decision not to pay becomes immediately logical. You do not pay $6 million for a body you are being led to. You ask for proof. And if proof never comes, you wait. Former FBI veteran Maureen O'Connell noted that this dynamic, a kidnapper apologizing after an unintended death, is statistically more likely to involve a female author than a male one. People that apologize, over 90% of them are female, she said. And then also gone to God. That's something clearly designed to comfort the family. That detail has never been addressed by law enforcement. If the apology note is real and its author intended to comfort the Guthrie family, it raises a question no one has publicly asked. Is there a woman involved in this, either as a primary actor or as a communications channel for whoever carried out the abduction? Pull back from the ransom notes and look at the broader forensic picture, because several physical threads in this investigation are now being evaluated in new light. The 3 back doors at Nancy Guthrie's home, not sliding glass doors as many assumed, but regular doors with pane glass windows, have now been examined by drone and visited on foot by investigators and journalists. Former SWAT Commander Krieger confirmed that propping those doors open was a deliberate operational decision. Quick in, quick out, he said. Just one less thing you have to think about. You don't want the door closing behind you and automatically locking. You just leave it open and know exactly where you're going. That level of operational thinking, planning ingress and egress in advance, accounting for door lock mechanics, pre-planning an exit route, does not describe someone acting on impulse. The DNA analysis at DNA Labs International in Deerfield Beach, Florida, continues. An unknown male DNA sample recovered from the interior of Nancy's home, not matching anyone in her known circle, is being processed using next-generation mixture deconvolution technology deployed ahead of its scheduled release. No match has been confirmed publicly. Federal law enforcement sources previously told Fox News Digital that the DNA evidence from Nancy's home provided only a partial profile, insufficient for the FBI's CODIS database of known offenders, as well as investigative genetic genealogy techniques at the standard threshold. The lab in Florida is working to push past that threshold using the accelerated technology. The Wi-Fi disruption investigation continues. Sheriff Nanos confirmed to NBC News that investigators have been asking neighbors specifically about internet connectivity issues on the night Nancy disappeared, and that the possibility of a Wi-Fi jammer being used is actively under examination. A damaged utility box around the corner from Nancy's home remains under review. The gun holster, the backpack, both visible in the doorbell camera footage and both described as potentially traceable through purchase records and manufacturer databases, remain active investigative threads. USA Today, reviewing the full scope of why this case has remained unsolved after 2 months, noted that investigators face a combination of challenges: no confirmed suspect, DNA evidence that has not yet produced an actionable profile, camera systems that were either disabled or produced limited footage, and terrain that limited the effectiveness of search operations. And on top of all of it, an institutional failure at the Pima County Sheriff's Department that may have permanently compromised the crime scene. Savannah Guthrie described her sleepless nights to Hoda Kotb in words that were simple and devastatingly direct. She said she wakes up and thinks about what her mother saw above her bed, about the terror Nancy experienced in the dark, in her own home, in the place where she had lived for half a century. Savannah spoke of the pain of not knowing, describing the anguish as something the family carries every minute of every day. She said the not knowing was its own particular cruelty, separate from grief, heavier than mourning, because there is no place to put it and no way to move through it. She talked about her faith. She talked about what she believes spiritually, personally, as a woman who has written about God in public, about where her mother is. She said she has felt in her most private moments a certainty that she knows where Nancy is and who she is with, whether Nancy is still on this earth or somewhere beyond it. In an earlier Instagram post, Savannah had written, "We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves and is dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad and with her beloved brother Pierce and with our daddy." That sentence, posted by Savannah herself weeks ago, is the most direct public acknowledgement the family has made that they believe Nancy may no longer be alive. It was framed in faith, not in investigation, but the implication is unmistakable. And yet they continue. They continue because the law requires it, because justice requires it, because a person or persons committed a crime against a mother and a grandmother and an 84-year-old woman who had lived in the same house for 50 years and gone to church every Sunday and played cards with her grandchildren and trusted the world around her with the particular trust that comes from having built a life in one place. Bob Krieger, the former SWAT commander who walked the terrain behind Nancy's house this week and looked at the neighborhood that was once so quiet it made the dogs bark at the smallest sound, said something that stayed with him long after the cameras stopped. "There's other folks going through this," he said, "and I'm sure there are families sitting there thinking, how come my family doesn't get this?" Just remembering that the normal person is also getting this type of police work. This is just getting the attention because of who Savannah is. He is right. In this case, has made that visible in a way that no amount of statistics or policy reports could. The suspect is still out there. Sheriff Nanos has confirmed to NBC News that investigators believe the crime was targeted, that they have strong beliefs about the motive that have not diminished since day one. He has declined to share those beliefs publicly, citing the integrity of the investigation. But he said this: "It would be silly to tell people, don't worry about it. You're not his target. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe." That statement has never been walked back. An armed man, masked, gloved, carrying a backpack and a holstered firearm, possibly equipped with signal disrupting technology, entered a residential neighborhood in Tucson's Catalina foothills, disabled the cameras, came in through the back doors, took an 84-year-old woman from her bed and walked her or carried her out through the front door and into a vehicle that drove away into the Arizona night. He has not been identified. He has not been arrested. And the sheriff responsible for leading the investigation into his crime had, in sworn testimony just months earlier, denied ever being suspended as a law enforcement officer, a statement directly contradicted by 37 days of documented suspension across 8 separate incidents in El Paso, Texas, decades ago. Retired FBI Special Agent Jason Pack, reviewing Nanos' public statements about the suspect's motive, made a pointed observation. When the sheriff says investigators believe they know the motive but won't share it, there's an investigative reason. You don't hand the suspect a roadmap of what you know. But he added, once you put out there that the perpetrator could strike again, every person watching wants to know who's at risk and what they ought to do about it. If you can't answer those questions, you probably shouldn't lead with that statement. 2 statements that contradict each other, both from the same sheriff. neither one fully reliable. That is the state of official communication in the Nancy Guthrie case on day 59. Here is where everything stands as of Tuesday, March 31st, 2026. The back doors of Nancy Guthrie's home were propped open as an entry mechanism. The blood trail leads out the front. A former SWAT commander who walked the terrain behind the house confirmed that bringing Nancy through the desert scrub at night would have been effectively impossible. The exit was through the front door, into a waiting vehicle, down a driveway that ends at a dark Arizona road. An unverified claim from two independent sources suggests the second ransom note was an apology, that the sender did not know how serious Nancy's heart condition was and that she has gone to be with God. This has not been confirmed. It requires verification. But it lines up with the family's own language, the empty Bitcoin wallet, and the decision never to pay. The sheriff leading this investigation denied under oath that he had ever been suspended as a law enforcement officer. He was suspended 8 times, totaling 37 days, before resigning in lieu of termination in 1982. Facts now on the public record through the Arizona Republic. His deputies have voted unanimously against him. A recall effort is active. The Board of Supervisors is investigating potential perjury. The DNA analysis continues in Florida. The Wi-Fi disruption investigation continues. The gun holster and backpack remain under investigation as traceable items. The genetic genealogy pathway remains open if a viable profile can be isolated. And Savannah Guthrie returns to the Today Show anchor chair next Monday, April 6th, 6 days from now, to sit in front of the country and read the news while none of her family's questions have been answered. If you know anything at all about what happened to Nancy Guthrie, about activity near her home on January 11th or in the early hours of February 1st, about anyone who was behaving unusually in the weeks before her disappearance, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. The family's $1 million reward is still active. This video took hours to build. If it gave you the full picture no single outlet covered today, share it right now. Leave a like. And if you are not subscribed to the True Crime Report, today is the day. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 59 days. This case is not cold. The investigation is not over. And someone, somewhere in southern Arizona, knows something they have not said. I am Sandra. This is the True Crime Report. Thank you for watching.